A few years ago during Christmas shopping season in Orleans, I got a call from Watson's, the clothing store. They had just had a Cooper's hawk fly into the store. And it was like it was mayhem. It was crazy. And because it's nearby and we can help people who were closer physically to us. So I went down there and it was crazy. Everyone, there was, the terrified salesperson, there was the understanding, want to help animals. And there was the manager who was obviously afraid it was going to poop on things. But that was pretty exciting for everyone. And I was recognized in that store for about 3 years as the person who came to help them during the hawk.
It is really, really fun to feed chimney swifts because chimney swifts hang on things instead of perch. And so they're usually, when they're old enough to be fed by volunteers, which I am, they'll be in a shed and they're hanging on screens and nets and whatever. But as soon as you show up with food, they hang on you. And so it's really quite delightful because all of a sudden you have these, they're hanging on your hair and they're hanging on your clothes, they're hanging on your glasses and they're hanging on your ears. And so and they're all little babies with mouths going, blah, 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 like a mile a minute. And so you're trying to feed them in your hair and feed them on your sweater or your shirt or whatever. So feeding chimney swifts is really, really delightful. It's a blast.
I've always loved the Cape, like many people who summered here, and have a real feeling for it. So I'm glad to be able to participate in something like Wild Care, where you give back a little bit, and not incidentally, where you learn all the time. I learn something every day when I'm there.
When I came across Wild Care, I was like, oh my goodness, this is so amazing that they're doing this work. And the work that they do is so incredible and just very loving and nurturing and friendly. And I love this organization.
As a young man that grew up on the Cape, I've long been someone who's been an advocate of the outdoors. I'm a fisherman. I spent a lot of time hiking the trails and the beaches and certainly spent a lot of time on the water. Became involved with Wild Care many years ago, actually probably right around when Wild Care first started looking at the facility in Orleans, and really took an interest in Wild Care and what they were doing because it really resonated and spoke to me as to a relationship similar to what I felt here with the Cape and the interests. Taking care of the wildlife, the birds, any sort of the aquatic animals as well. Any organization that's interested in preserving our environment, our sandy beaches, our waterways, the dunes, and certainly any of the wildlife that lives within that is something that I want to support.
People on the Cape love wildlife. There's lots of wildlife here on the Cape, and people who live here or visit really appreciate and respect the wildlife. So Wild Care is an organization that protects that wildlife. And the wildlife are around us all the time, and people are always running into something that is in need. It's either injured or orphaned or sick. And I think they appreciate having a place to call when they find an animal in need. So that's one important role that we play. But we also educate the public. We have found that almost 50% of the animals that come to us are due to negative human interactions. So we want to teach people how to live in harmony with their wildlife neighbors, because it can be done, and it can be done better. So
the joy I get from Wild Care is that people are learning, and it's sad to see the animals come in the way they are, but that's not how I approached Wild Care at first. I just wanted to help the little animals and be there for them. And now I feel like I'm helping the people so the animals can get helped and understood, because the animals need to be understood, especially when we make all these conservation areas for them. And we really can't complain about them.
I just think the educational portion of what Wild Care does is so, so important. The more I get to know about their work, the more excited I am, and the more I really want to help support them with my business, with Dune Jewelry and different fundraisers we can do together. There's just so much synergy. And I'm excited to see what we can do now and in the future.
tell you, in the last year, the most important thing that WildCare did was not ever interrupt its service. We got through baby season. If baby season, the census of patients at WildCare probably goes from 30 to 130. And that new 100 all needs to be fed by hand by volunteers. So we had the usual number of babies in baby season and not the usual number of volunteers. But somehow WildCare was able to deploy spaces and people and get it all done. It's simply extraordinary. It's what really mattered in 2020.
People that live here do care about the environment and about the animals that live here. And it's such a special place, and that's reflected in people's attitudes. I think this past year, just being able to keep the doors open is a huge accomplishment. Engaging with the public through live Facebook videos, providing information. I think and trying to provide, Stephanie's done a lot of educational programming via Zoom. It is really amazing to me how we were able to just, as well as many other companies, just pivot and make the best of a horrible situation. And we have amazing rehabilitators that were willing to come in and keep the doors open. It's all about them. Without them, it wouldn't have happened.
One thing that I think most people who know about WildCare don't realize is that we are supported solely by donations and grants and fundraising. We don't get any state or federal money. So we really appreciate people making donations, whether it's donation of money or goods or services. And I just want to say, this past year with COVID-19, the generosity of people has been overwhelming. We stayed afloat throughout this virus because of people's generosity.